gentlemen.
Good evening.
I'm Pam Kaufman, for those of you who don't know me, with my mask on. And my white hair. This is my COVID hair. It's not red anymore. It's my COVID color. But we're glad you're here, and thank you for coming out. It's nice to be able to have people in the gallery for a change. And so tonight we have a really special treat. We're so excited to have Philomena here.
Thank you.
And I'm going to tell you just a little bit about her, and then I'm going to let her do her thing. So she was raised in Brooklyn and near Coney Island. She attended high school the High School of Art and Design in Manhattan. She got her BFA from Pratt, and she's been practicing this amazing, amazing work of cut paper collage for decades. She doesn't look like she's been doubled. And she learned this particular technique when she was an intern for Robert, Indiana. Her work's been exhibited by ACA Gallery, Prince Street Gallery, Tabla Rasa Gallery in New York, among others, and she recently had a solo show at Art Center in Sarasota. She's represented in numerous private corporate museum collections, including the Brooklyn Museum. And I have to add this wasn't in her bio, but you all need to put this in your little minds, and you need to Google her on YouTube, and Google Take Me There by Philomena Marano.
Oh, you saw that.
I did. Yeah. She has a short trailer for a paper cut animation piece. It is adorable. So when you get a chance, take a look at it, because it's a lot of fun, and it's great to see. So with no further ado, Philomena.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming out in these on these precarious nights, wearing masks and all. And I'm really happy to be here and share my work and how it's done. And I look forward to hearing your observations and questions during the talk or after, either or. Now, what Pam was talking about, I just have to add this, the Take Me There little animation. That concept of the elevated train turning into a roller coaster and going to Coney Island is kind of a very cherished memory of mine. And a friend of mine that had an animation studio asked if I wanted to animate it in paper, and we did. And I decided to open up this talk with that same theme. I want to give you a little bit of history about myself. In Brooklyn, we lived maybe like half a block from the elevated train. And during the summers, we would go to the beach and the amusement park frequently. And that elevated train took us there, take me there. And I believed at a very young age that it was the roller coaster from Coney Island coming to get us, I'm serious, and bringing us there, like my own private chauffeur.
Wow.
And you would wonder about that, and maybe not wonder, because once the train took off, we only had about a 10-minute ride, and it made a big wide turn into Coney Island. It kind of aligns along with the giant Cyclone roller coaster, and almost merged with it. So as I said, in my young mind, I'm thinking, oh, this is the coaster that takes us there, wow, which is hilarious. Anyway, Coney Island is a collage. How's my sound? Okay? Okay. It's layered in so many ways. The colors, the sights, the sounds, and the tastes. And they're all layered against incredible, wondrous mechanical rides that spin and twirl. And behind that, if you look through the spokes of the Ferris wheel, you'll see another roller coaster. If you look through the roller coaster, you'll see the bobsled, or you'll see the zipper. And that kind of layering, there's always something in front of something else or something behind something else, kind of made its way into my artistic practice. Because I'm always thinking when I'm working, what's in front of this and what's in front of that. And that's how I'm able to work from the bottom layer forward. So in time, Coney Island became a source of major inspiration for my art making through the years. Now I want to say something about this show. There's a mix of my work, some Coney Island and some Florida thrill shows. And there's a continuity there that just happened to amaze me. When we arrived in Sarasota 3.5 years ago, we moved from New York. I started looking at circus imagery online, thinking that there would be this connection to my Coney Island roots. And as I looked, I found I was connected most to the thrill shows and the stunt shows, more than the ringling circus and the animal acts, et cetera, et cetera. And the first thing I saw that really blew me away was the globe of thunder right here. And it also reminded me of one time where years and years ago, my husband and I went to a traveling Mexican circus in Cartagena, Colombia, and the steel globe was there with motorcyclists spinning round and round and sparks flying and sound. And I hadn't seen one since that experience. So here I find this incredible globe, and I realized that it was from the company, the Nerveless Knox. They're a Sarasota group that does all kinds of daredevil acts. And I contacted them, and they began to send me reference, which was extremely helpful and wonderful. And I want to say something about when I precisely cut these tiny little diamonds on the globe. I thought about the cyclists and the kind of precision that they need to exercise in their work. And an affinity happened with them and me, and I almost call it a Zen experience. So no longer was it tedious to cut the tiny little diamonds. It was something very spectacular, some sort of connection. Okay, the sky wheels is this on? The sky wheels is another one of the Nerveless Knox stunt shows.
I think the bottom of your thing is hitting your necklace. I think maybe that's.
Yep.
The little thing that hangs. I think it's hitting that.
I'll put it inside. Okay, thank you.
I think that's.
The reason why I really adore working in cut paper is that I could bring out the poetry, the visual poetry in my subjects, whether it's delicate and whimsical with a fluid line, or hard-edged and architectonic, like something like this, or machinery. And it's like drawing with an X-Acto blade, if you could imagine that. Drawing into the paper and then pulling it up and finding a shape. I would like to, step by step, if you like, go through how I actually make one of these.
Yeah.
There's a lot of preparation, okay, a lot of thought and a lot of hard work, and here it goes. First of all, I find a photo or a sketch that I do on site that I'm interested in, okay? And I do a lot of thumbnail sketches to decide, hey, would I want the sky wheels to be a vertical piece, or would I want it to be diagonal or horizontal? And then my favorite thumbnail, I blow up to the size of the board I'm going to work on. So here I have this large drawing. I take a piece of vellum and I trace a very clean line, and a soft pencil, I trace the entire drawing. And that becomes my master tracing. Or it's a guide or a map. And I need to obey that thoroughly in order to get the pieces down where they should be to make the composition. So once the master tracing is done, I trace from that master tracing. Let me get on this side. The separate pieces within the cut paper work. Now, in this particular image, there was no tent that swooped across the bottom, and the ride really wasn't as tall as it looks here. I kind of left out the bottom of the ride. It was kind of like a brace. and I decided to make this swoop like a tent, and I used the night sky for more drama and height. So all of that goes into it also at the same time. Anyway, back to the cutting. Once I trace, say, this circle or this figure, I put it aside and I cut it out of the colored paper that I decided should be. And as far as the backgrounds go, I usually make a list deciding on, well, what is the utmost, furthest away background that exists, the sky, okay? The bright blue lines in the sky, actually. So there's a full piece of bright blue, then I cut the deep blue, put that over it. The tent, not just yet the tent, there's purple behind the tent. So it's all a matter of what goes in front of what, and that's how everything is arranged. My work is like a synthesis of drawing, painting, and graphic design, if you could imagine that working together. Drawing with an X-Acto, painting with paper, because the colored paper is my palette, and the X-Acto knife is my implement. Now there's the gluing part, and this is where the graphic design comes in. Okay. I tape my master tracing to the top of my board so it can flap up like this, okay? I take the back pieces first, and I put the glue on. That's another story. And the tracing is a guide, so I kind of move it. I move the cutout underneath the tracing and position it. In advertising, years and years ago, before computer graphics, that was called a slip sheet, what I'm talking about. Did anybody ever hear of that? Okay, great. And I learned that actually in the High School of Art and Design, and a little bit more with Robert Indiana, which I'll talk about. Now the gluing, for large pieces is very difficult because I use something called jade glue, and it's a white liquid glue, and it's archival. And with large pieces, I need to either roll it on or brush it on. Now by that time, the pieces are curling already as they're drying. So I developed a method where I, as the glue is drying, I kind of tack them on with push pins. Not a push pin through the piece, just kind of hooked on its side on a piece of cork, and I let it dry flat. Then I place the large piece on the board where it goes by navigating with my master tracing, and I iron it down. I use an adhesive release paper, which I buy at a library supply company called Talus. And what happens is the adhesive release paper doesn't allow any of the glue to stick to it. And I get a warm iron back and forth, back and forth. So that's how the larger pieces, which are the first pieces to go down, happen. Later on, with the narrower and skinny little pieces, I use a tweezer. I'm not keeping this in the right spot. I use a tweezer and Q-tips. And I kind of, move the glue around and quickly place it where it needs to be. So it really is a process. Now, I learned the process when I worked as an assistant to Robert Indiana, preeminent artist. We worked on a project of cut paper, and it was when he was commissioned to design sets and costumes for the Mother of Us All opera. It was a bicentennial production in Santa Fe. All of the costumes and sets were rendered in cut paper. The look was characteristic of his bright colored paintings, and at the same time had the feeling of an early American cutout silhouette, because the story was about Susan B. Anthony fighting for women's rights to vote. It was a collaboration between Gertrude Stein and Virgil Thompson, and we worked diligently on these plates. And as I'm working and the project is nearing an end, I'm saying to myself, I really want to continue using this medium. And I started thinking about Coney Island. the Coney Island of my childhood. And it was probably because of the brilliant color and the chromatic hues that were inspiring me. But at the same time, it was Robert Indiana's paintings that were surrounding the studio. Paintings of letters and numbers that looked like signs. And I learned that they were the signs of his youth, from highway signs, when he drove around for hours with his mom when she was searching for work as he stared out the window. Numbers from the 21 addresses he lived at before he was age 17. And I was just amazed at how an artist could pour his autobiography into images of signs. And then a light bulb went off, and I said, I have my signs too. And I immediately went to Coney Island and began to search for them. There were a lot of them. And that's how we come to Spookorama. This piece is titled Ma Est I. It sounds like a mantra, correct? Ma Est I. So there's a fascination of type here, with type here, coming from Indiana's studio, of course. And what it really is, it's a piece of a sign cut off that says Spookorama, Ma, world's longest spook ride. Okay. Now, this ride was there when I was a child, and it's still there. It's gone through some iterations, but the doors with the eyes, the painted eyes, still reign. The owners of the ride continually have someone repaint them each year, because that's the spookiest part. But I'll tell you a little bit about my relationship to the ride and then about how I did it. As a child, me and my sister and my cousin would go into this ride, and as soon as the door, boom, slammed open, it was terrifying. Pitch black, you know, with the sounds of, you know, blood-curdling screams, etc. And I never told them, I'm confessing this tonight, my eyes were always closed. I was in the middle, I was the smallest one. I never opened them. The shrieks, and yeah, if I did, maybe I did once, I would see some sort of goblin or witch flailing inside like a chicken wire cage with lights flashing, you know, extremely terrifying. Now, at the time, well, in the 80s, I did this piece probably about 2006 from memory and photographs, etc., and sketches. But earlier on, in 1985, with my revitalization group, we got to know all the ride operators and the families that were there. So they allowed us into Spookorama with the lights on.
Oh, wow.
And it was scarier than going in the dark, because I found that there were clustered groups of figures, witches and vampires from like the 1930s, all just hanging around in there. It was their storage. And the car would kind of weave its way in the dark around them, so you never knew they were there. So what you don't know, it doesn't hurt you, right? So then I was more deadly afraid to go in there after knowing what existed. But it was really an incredible collection. Okay, this piece, as you can see, is broken up. The surface is broken up into 3D. To emphasize the tumble-down nature of what the ride had become. Basically, it was painted wood. There's pipes around. I created fictional shadows to kind of produce more of a delirium, you know. And I used also paint and pastel rubbed on, which I don't really use much. I kind of keep it usually really almost religious about using color aid. But yes, this is color aid, and I really had an incredible time doing this piece because of the rich color and the layers of so much fantasy beneath the ride itself. And this flap here, if you look in, it's white, there's nothing at all. That's for the viewer to imagine. back in here. If you get up and walk around later, you'll see it. I'd like to add in that I know that when people first see my work from a distance, they think it's printed or painted. But when they get, and I love to watch this in the gallery, when they get up close and personal, really close, I see the body language change. And they're freaked out, and it's almost like the door swings open and they're in the thrill ride. So that's a kind of another aspect of the work which parallels my subject matter